Hello, I'm now going to record Daf Kuf Ches, Part 2. Before we begin, we're up to the mission on the bottom of Kuf Ches Amid Aleph, but we had a shaila whether you can write tefillin on the skin of a kosher fish. The Gemara said, when Eliyahu will come, he'll tell us. So the Gemara asked right away, how could that be? And Rashi explains, Mayim Yov Eliyahu. Rashi explains because Eliyahu loy b'shamayim. So we're not supposed to listen to any psakim that come from heaven. The Chassam Sofer has an opinion that Eliyahu Navi can appear either in a human form or in a dream or in a nevuah. When Eliyahu appears in a human form, he's considered a human and he has to keep the laws of the Torah and then he can paskin. But if he appears like in a cholim, ashrei mishara panav b'chalaim, then those things are not roy and not fit for psak because loy b'shamayim. The Rambam writes that if a navi adds or subtracts or does anything to change the Torah, and he's not believed in saying that Hashem told him to change anything in the Torah, and he's not believed to paskin anything based on something that he saw b'nevuah. So the Chor, according to the Rambam, even if Eliyahu Navi appears as a person in a human body, but if he tells us that his information came because of what he heard b'shamayim, it still would not be valid. The Mishnah L'Melech differentiates between halachic decisions and mitzias facts. He says in b'shamayim they can tell you the mitzias. If we don't know whether a piece of meat came from a behema kshera or a non-kosher behema, so that min hashamayim you can be told. But to go paskin on a judgment call, that was given libnei adam for people to paskin. So the Gemara here says that in the end Eliyahu is going to tell us whether the zuhama of the fish ended. So l'chayra, that's the davar mitzias, whether the zuhama ended or not. So that Eliyahu can tell you whether the zuhama, whether the odor of the fish skin is still there or it's gone. I saw that there's another issue that the zuhama doesn't even mean odor, because that's something we can really tell ourselves. But we know that at Har Sinai, Paska Zuhamasam of the whole Bria, but maybe not of the fish that were beyond. Anyway, I don't know. Look the Mishnah. Einois and Hilmi, you're not allowed to make salt water, which is used for pickling vegetables, b'Shabbos and Shabbos. Either is because it looks like you're working to ma'abed. Ma'abed means tanning a skin, and just like tanning a skin, preserve the skin. So the same way, you're not allowed to make the salt water, which will not tan but preserve the vegetables. Or some say because it's an uvda d'chayil, or yemeichen nishabas l'chayil. Avalaisu es mei melech, but you're allowed to make stam salt water. V'toivelem ben pitoy v'noisen l'tech tavshel. You can make salt water, dip your bread into salt water, put the salt water into a tavshel. Amr Rabbi Yossi disagrees. He says, "V'loi hilmi bein meruba bein muad." What's the difference between a lot of salt water or a little bit of salt water? So therefore, Rabbi Yossi says, "Ve'elu hein mei melech hamutarin." How can you make salt water? If you noise in shem lekatchila, either l'taych hamayim or l'taych hamelech. If you put oil into the water or oil into the salt, so that's going to make it that the salt doesn't mix well with the water, and the salt won't have that koyach in order to be able to preserve anything, and then you're allowed to. But you can't add oil after you put the water and salt together. You either put oil into the water or oil into the salt and then mix it together. My Kamer, what did the Tanakama mean? You can't make a lot of mei melech, because if you make a lot of it, it looks like you're making it for preservative purposes. But you can make a small amount of salt water. Rabbi Yossi says, what's the difference between a lot and a little? So the Gemara has a shaila, Rabbi Yossi le'asar or le'hatir. Did Rabbi Yossi mean to prohibit a small amount of salt water, or did he mean to allow a large amount of salt water? Rav Yudah says, le'hatir. He came to allow. Midloiktani, since it doesn't say Rabbi Yossi Eiser. If he would have asked all kinds of salt water, he should have said Rabbi Yossi Eiser. Amalei Rabba, so Rabba goes the other way. Midiktani Seifas, the end of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi says, Ve'eluhen mei melech hamutarin. Let me tell you how you're allowed to make salt water, by mixing the salt or the water first with oil. Mechlal, that means the Rabbi Yossi lesser. Rabbi Yossi prohibited making salt water. Elam Rabba le'esar, v'chein Rabbi Yochanan le'esar. Rabbi Yossi Aser is making all kinds of salt water, unless you do it the way he prescribed in the Mishnah, mixing oil with the salt or oil with the water first. And Tanya Nami Hochi, we learned in the Brisa also exactly like that. And oisen me melech merubin loses l'toich hakivoshin. You're not allowed to make a large amount of salt water to put it into pickled vegetables. Shebetoich hagistra, it used to be put into a clay utensil, which was a piece of a larger clay utensil. That's how they used to do it. Aval oisu me melech muatin, but you can make a little bit of salt water. V'oichel ben pitoi, eat your bread with it. Noisen l'toich tavshil, put it into a tavshil. Rabbi Yossi says, v'chim ibnei sha'alolu merubin v'alolu muatin, alolu asurin v'alolu mutarin. Just because one is a lot and one is less, so the a lot is asur and a little bit is mutter. Yomri, people will learn from this that malachim ruba asura. That only if you do a large malach or a lot of malach it's asur, but if you do malachim with it's muteris. If you do a little bit of malach it's mutter. Ela elu ve'elu asur in hain. But it doesn't matter. Rabbi Yossi's machmer, you can't make salt water. Period, whether it's a lot or a little. Ve'elu hain me'melech hamutar, and the way you're allowed to do it is nice and shemen and melech shemen and mayim. Mix the salt of the water first with oil. Don't put together the water and the salt and then add oil. Simon is azin, son Ezrik Simon. Tani Rab Yudah bar Chaviva ein oisen mei melech azin. You're not allowed to make a strong mei melech. He learns pshat. The meruba means with a lot of salt. My melech azin. What is my melech azin? Rabbi Rav Yosef bar Abba Damri Tarvayu. Rabbi Rav Yosef both said, Kol sha'beitza tzafa behen. If an egg would float in it because of the salt. And v'kama, how much salt is there in that mixture? Rabbi trei tilte milcha v'tilsa maya. 2/3 salt, 1/3 water. Lamai avdullah. What do you make such a strong salty mixture for? Rababo lim muryasa. This muryasa we had, which is fish. It's fried with fish oil and with flour and very heavily salt. A lot of salt water or heavily salted water. Taner Reb Yudah bar Chaviva taught in Brisa and Molchin Tznain Ubei b'Shabbos. You're not allowed to salt 3 or 4 pieces of radish or 3 or 4 pieces of egg because the salt preserves it and makes it hard, and that's a form of ma'abed. Reb Chizki Mishmei Dabayim Tznain Aser, for radish it's Aser, but Beyim Muteris, because the salt doesn't do much for the egg. It doesn't really preserve the egg. Amr of Nachman, Mereish Hava Malachna Pugla. I used to salt pieces of radish. I've had a number of pieces. I would salt them on Shabbos. I thought of Sudikam Afsidnale. I thought it really destroys it. Why? Damar Shmuel Pugla Churfi Ma'ali. Because Shmuel said the sharper the radish is, the better it is. And the salt takes away the sharpness. The Kivan the Shamanallah the Chiyasa Ula Va'amar B'Marova Molchi Kishri. I heard when Ula came from Eretz Yisrael, he said that in Eretz Yisrael they used to salt piles and piles of radish. Oh, so that's how they preserve the radish, and that's considered an improvement in the radish. Is mimlech loy malachna. I don't salt 2 pieces of radish together on Shabbos, but tabuli vadim atbilna. But to dip my radish into salt, that I can do, and I eat it right away. Tani Rab Yudah bar Chaviva, he taught a brisa, esrig tznain ubeya, an esrig radish and an egg, il molek kliposa nachitzaina, if not for their outer layer, and in yotzim and me'ayim lo'ilam, it would get hard inside your stomach, and you'd never be able to get it out of your system. Kyoser of Dimi, when Rav Dimi came from Eretz to Bavel, Omar, he said, "Mi'olam lo'tava gavra b'yama d'sdaim." No one ever drowned in the Dead Sea in Yam HaMelech. Omar of Yosef, Sir of Yosef says, "Hafucha Sdaim," just like Sdaim was turned upside down. Hafucha Mila, whatever you talk about, Sdaim is also upside down. What do you mean a person doesn't drown in Yam HaMelech? Gavra hu d'lo'tava, but kshura tava. A man won't drown there, but a beam will sink. Abai said, "There's no difficulty." Loi mi boy kamer means not only. Loi mi boy kshura. Not only beams, which never sinks in any water in the world, but a man that in other waters he could sink, but but in the Yam HaMelech he doesn't sink. Why? Because it's so salty that it's so much salt that it stops the body from sinking. Why do I need to know that the water in Yam HaMelech is so salty? For another issue. Ravan was walking behind Rabbi Yirmiyah, Aguda the Yam next to the Dead Sea. Amar Lei, so Ravan asks Rabbi Yirmiyah, you're allowed to take some of that water and wash with it on Shabbos, or does it look like you're taking the water for medicinal purposes? Amar Lei says Shaper Dami, it's mutter, because it doesn't necessarily look like you're taking it for medicinal purposes, it looks like you're just washing your body with the water. Can you put some by your eye? and force your eye open and closed in order that the water should go in better in your eye. If you open and close your eye tight back and forth in order the water should go in, then it might look like medicinal purposes. Because kiyotze bashamati, not this case, but I heard a similar case. Domer Reb Zeir said, Zimnin Amar lo Mishmei de Reb Masna, Zimnin Amar lo Mishmei de Mar Ukva, either from Reb Masna or from Mar Ukva, V'tarvayu, and they both quoted Mishmei de Avur de Shmuel v'Levi, Amrin. And they both said it in the name of Avur de Shmuel and Levi. And the story is as follows. Chad, one said, either Avur de Shmuel or Levi. Omar said, Yayin b'toicha ayin, to wash out your eye with wine on Shabbos is usher, because it's evident nobody puts wine in the eye because it's l'refuah. But I'm sorry, to wash out your eye with wine and to open and close it tight back and forth is usher, because opening and closing your eye tightly looks like you're doing it because you want it to enter and be a refuah. But al gav ayin, to put the wine above the eye and not to force your eye back and forth open and closed is mutter, because maybe you're just bathing your eye with wine. V'chadam, the other says, reg tofel, saliva in the morning when you haven't eaten anything, which is very, very potent. Afilo al gav ayin also, even to put it above the eye, even if you're not flexing your eye open and closed is also usher, because nobody would put such a strong saliva near the eye unless it's for medicinal purposes. So saliva is usher no matter how you put it, and wine is only usher if you flex your eye open and closed. As l'chayrim, v'yamamelech, also you can wash your face with it, but don't flex your eye open and closed, because then it looks like you're doing it for medicinal purposes. By the way, this time I want to prove to you that Avur de Shmuel, hu da Amar, yayin b'toich ayin usher, al gav yayin muter. I think it was Shmuel's father who talked about the wine, that to flex your eye open and closed is usher, but to put it above the eye is muter. Because Midah Amar Shmuel, because Shmuel once said, Shoy rodam pita b'yayin, a person can put bread into wine, and then v'noisna al gav ayin b'Shabbos, and put it on the eye b'Shabbos. Why would Shmuel say you're allowed to do that? Because and by the way, the reason why you're allowed to do that, it looks like you're just bathing your eye. Because the Shmiya lei miman, and who could Shmuel have heard it from? Lav nespa, would you not say, the Shmiya lei miavu, he heard it from his father. So Avur de Shmuel was the one who talked about the yayin, that opening and closing your eye tightly with wine is usher, but putting it on the eye is mutter. But according to you, Shmuel also said the reik tafel al filo gav ayin usher, that saliva which you hadn't eaten anything in the morning, you're not even allowed to put it above the eye because it looks like you're doing it l'refuah. The shmiya le'miman, and who could have heard that from? If he heard that also from his father, so then Avur the Shmuel both said the halacha legabi yayin and the halacha legabi the saliva. Ella rather, chodesh shmiya le'miavua v'chodesh shmiya le'milevi. Shmuel heard one from his father, Avur the Shmuel, and one he heard from Levi. V'lo yadinan haimi avua and haimi Levi. Which one did he hear from his father? Which one did he hear from Levi? One had to do with wine, that opening and closing your eye tightly is usher, but just putting it above the eye is mutter. And reik tafel, you're not even allowed to put above the eye. Omar Mar Ukva, Omar Shmuel, Shara Adam Kilurin, Me'erev Shabbos, a person is allowed to soak plants that make this medication on Friday, and v'noisen al gav einav b'Shabbos, and he could put it on his eye b'Shabbos v'eina chayshish, and doesn't have to be concerned. Why? Because even though you're not supposed to put something on your eye, which is l'refuah because of shchika samimonim, but since you had to do it me'erev Shabbos, so since you had to soak it me'erev Shabbos, the person became alert and aware, and is not going to come to be shaychik samonim on Shabbos. Somebody else will see what you're doing, but somebody else won't know that it's kilur and it's a medicinal fluid. He might think that it's yayin, and yayin you can wash your eye with yayin. So nobody else will know that you're taking something that has medicinal benefit, and the person himself who does it knows that the only way he's allowed to do it is by soaking it Erev Shabbos, so he becomes alert that you're not allowed to do medications on Shabbos. And you won't come to be shachik samamonim. Bar Levoy havikoi kamei de Mar Ukva. Bar Levoy was in front of Mar Ukva. Chazia, he saw that Mar Ukva had put this kilurin on his eye on Shabbos. He was forcing his eye closed and open. Mar Shmuel would allow you to put the kilurin on your eye if it was prepared and soaked near Shabbos, but not to open and close your eye, because there it really looks like you're doing it l'shem refuah, and other people will think the refuah is mutter b'Shabbos, and they'll come to be shaychik samimonim. Sholach le Reb Yanai le Mar Ukva. Reb Yanai sent a message to Mar Ukva l'shader l'anmar mihanach kilurin de Mar Shmuel. Shmuel was a doctor. He said, can you send me some of those plants that Shmuel used to prepare in order for people to heal their eyes? Sholach le says, Shaduri mishdarnalach. I'm going to send you. You shouldn't think I'm stingy. Shmuel said, Toiva tipas tzayin shachris, or chitzis yadayim raglan, yadayim raglayim b'cham and arvis, mikol kilurin shabaylim. The best thing is to wash your eye with a bit of cold water in the morning, to wash your hands and feet with warm water in the evening, and that's better than all the medical kilurin, all the salves and all the potions. Tanya Nam Yochi, we learned in Rabraisa also, Amar Rabuna b'shem Mishum Rab Yehuda, Toiva tipas tzayin shachris, or chitzis yadayim raglayim arvis, mikol kilurin shabaylim. Better to wash your eye a bit from cold water in the morning, and to wash your hands and feet in the evening with warm water, better than all the kilurin in the world. Hu hayomer, Rabuna used to say, Yod la'ayin tikotzetz. If you touch your eye before you wash your hands in the morning, you deserve it should be cut, because you're getting your eye into trouble. Yod lachaitim, the hand to the nose, tikotzetz. Yod lepet, to the mouth, tikotzetz. Wherever there's an opening to the inside of the body. Yod la'oizen, tikotzetz, to the ear. Yod lechasuda, chasuda is the wound where you did bloodletting. Don't touch that spot before you wash your hands in the morning, tikotzetz. Yod la'ama, tikotzetz, a person touches his male aver before he washed his hands in the morning, tikotzetz. Yod lefiat tabas, tikotzetz, if the person touches himself in the back, where there's an opening to the body. Legigis tikotzetz, so if you touch a barrel that you put beer into, so there's a beverage there, also tikotzetz. Yod mesama, a hand to the eye can chas v'shol make the eye blind. Yod to the ear machareshes, it can make him deaf. Yod to the mouth or the nose, malapolipus, can cause a bad odor to come from the mouth or the nose. So a person should wash his hands in the morning till yadayim before he touches any opening to the body or any food. And if not, there's a kloli here, he deserves better to even have had it cut. Kol tuv, I think it's getting closer and closer. At the moment I know anything about the changing of location or whatever, what the Olam wants, I'll send out an email and hopefully we'll change appropriately. Kol tuv, have a good night.